All right, folks, I think we'll get started now. It looks like most of the attendees have come in, and hopefully more will roll in as we get going here. My name is Deb Conrad, and I am Program Director for the Higher Ed in Prison program for Western Nevada College. I want to welcome all of you in the audience and all of our panelists for being here tonight. I'm really excited for the conversation that's going to happen, and I think you all will be very impressed by what happens during this evening's event. 2 years ago, I was given the opportunity to run the Prison Ed program for the college, along with my colleague, Kim DeRoche. And at the time, I didn't know what kind of passion I was going to end up having for this program. And it's really the students who have given me that passion with their dedication and focus, and man, are they smart. So it has been a privilege to be a part of this program and to bring this event to you. Some of these students, just like any other students we have, dream of becoming entrepreneurs. Some are interested in skilled trades, and some want to go on to get bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, or even PhDs, and we are really proud to be a part of that process in a small way. And today in my inbox, I received a report called the Possibility Report, which was authored by Danny Murillo, who's formerly incarcerated student, and he's working for Campaign for College Opportunity. And I think that a piece in that report summed up why we're all here. And it said at least 95% of people in prison will eventually be released, and their ability to access and complete some form of college degree or credentials will increase their chance of overcoming post-incarceration barriers. Going from prison to earning a college degree or credential opens the doors to new possibilities of careers, economic mobility, housing, healthcare, civic engagement, and the uplifting of entire families and communities. I don't think I could say it any better than how they put it in the report. Education has the power to change lives, and I think you're going to see that tonight. We could not do what we do without the partnership we have with Nevada Department of Corrections. Since we started our program in 2015 at Warm Springs Correctional Center, they have provided us with the space, access to students, and have worked side by side with us to grow the program. And for that, we are very grateful. So now I want to introduce you to Deputy Director Harold Wickham, who is, he's the Director of Programs for NDOC, and he's going to give us some opening remarks. So over to you, Deputy Director.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. And first of all, I really want to thank Deb Conrad for asking me to be here. I'm so excited about our partnership with Western Nevada College and College Behind Bars. We currently have 4 times as many offenders enrolled in WNC than any other college. Even during the COVID pandemic, WNC had 256 offenders enrolled, and 246 of those have completed their classes. So we're really excited about that. I've worked in criminal justice all of my adult life. I started at age 19 and have been in this business for 40 years. I've worked on the law enforcement side doing reactive law enforcement, and worked on the correctional side doing proactive enforcement, which frankly I prefer the proactive side. But I think we can all agree that education is the single most important tool that we can give an offender in order for them to be successful and to keep our community safe. Education is the only thing that has proven to be significantly reduce recidivism and victimization in our communities. One of my most rewarding experiences was once when I was out shopping with my wife. I ran into a formerly incarcerated person. He approached me and he hugged me, and he thanked me for supporting his educational goals. And he was just beaming with pride and dignity as he told me of his successes because of Education Behind Bars. And then I'm going to add this just tonight. Wow, it was such a privilege. I had the opportunity to talk to Adam Temple. He was formerly incarcerated where I worked as a warden at Warm Springs, and he just really made my day, made my night, everything. because he thanked me for the work that we did at the facility that's helping him. And he's on this project tonight. So I'm just so pleased with that. So thank you, Adam. That really meant a lot to me. And Western Nevada College started its Associate of General Studies program back in 2015 at Warm Springs through the efforts of the WNC Veterans Resource Center and our Associate Warden, Lisa Walsh. From 2015 to 2019, the program was supported entirely by the Department of Corrections fundraisers and donations and grants from private and corporate donors. And now the NDOC fundraisers at that time accounted for $140,000. And I think there was $82,400 from the WNC Foundation support. And now funding from the state since 2020, we're talking a total of $276,000 for this project. So we're moving along. And then in 2019, we started at Northern Nevada Correctional Center with the support of my good friend and colleague, Deputy Director Bill Kawanga, in our Prison Industries Division. And that offered the Associate of Applied Science in Welding, and now they're doing the certifications in welding. Bill Kawanga, in cooperation with the Silver State Industries, is leveraging that work and the certifications to provide degree pathways. It's phenomenal what we're doing now. And before the pandemic, we had, I think there were 145 students between two sites, and we were offering 12 classes. Well, now with the state funds, we're able to double that. As this pandemic progresses and gets over, we hope to resume our normal operations where we plan on taking new students and again, growing this program. And I think it's also very important to say that without the dedication and the staff support and forward-thinking partnerships with Western Nevada College and the Department of Corrections, we simply couldn't accomplish this mission of public safety through college behind bars. So again, thank you for all your tremendous support. And now I think we're going to show a video clip reel. So again, thank you all.
Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular that interests me on the shore, I thought I would sell about a little and see the watery part of the world.
I'm taking Moby Dick. That's a really interesting class. The whole first paragraph we had to memorize, and each one of us had to recite in front of the rest of the class. You would see another guy in the class in the yard, and we would be like, hey, call me Ishmael, and he would go through it, and I would go through it, and we'd point out where we didn't match.
I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. Is the way I have of regulating the spleen and regulating the...
It's the way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation.
Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hyposter gets such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping out into the streets and methodically knocking people's hats off their heads, then I account it high time to get to sea as soon as I can.
How would you feel about that?
We got to remember that the crisis that the United States was in the early 1930s was a global economic crisis. And that crisis led to the rise of all kinds of anti-democratic regimes all over the world. And what Roosevelt's concerned about is the possibility that this could happen in the United States.
We are not a part of the prison system. We are a college who happens to have classes inside a prison. Unlike other schools, it has bars, it has gates that close and open, it has doors that must be locked. Although we say school building, it's not a traditional school building. Although what we do inside the school building is traditional college work.
One of the things that's always been most important to us is the institution's adamance that these students, the incarcerated students, are no different from any other. And in many ways, BPI is simply a very simple kind of experiment, which is what happens when we provide the kinds of education that typically in the United States are only afforded to the children of the lucky or the entitled or the rich to others.
I do not get rid of any draft. So you can see there's a lot of rewrites. I spend most of my time in the school building. If I'm in this cell, more often than not, I'm either reading, writing, or sleeping. This is a cell. This is not a place that I live in. Well, as you can see, there's no pictures or posters on the wall at all. I keep this bare. I don't forget that this is prison, even when I'm working. Because at some point, me, an officer, is gonna walk past this cell. I'm gonna hear the keys jangling on his belt. And he might stop by that cell and look through that window there. And so I don't forget. You never forget.
You could be inside the school building, there's a bell that rings or alarm that goes off, and it means stop doing what you're doing and go back in.
Part of being institutionalized is that your day is constantly interrupted. The chaos of the prison is an extraordinary challenge when it comes to the kind of focus that's necessary to get through the routine of college on a day-to-day basis.
It's hard to study when all the inmates come back from the programs. After 12 o'clock, it's dead quiet. That's when I could really focus. I'm studying till 3 o'clock in the morning because that's when it's most quiet. My favorite time of the night.
I was incarcerated for 20 years. I enrolled into BPI. I went on to get my BA degree in 2009. Admissions is a competitive process. We operate in 6 prisons across New York State. 5 of them are for men, 1 of them is for women. When admissions is fully open across all 6 facilities, we have up to 400 people applying.
I go to the interview, He was asking some crazy questions. I didn't even know what he was talking about half the time. I had to ask him, like, what did you just say? What does that word mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, then come find out, I get the letter, slipped in my door, seen it. I was like, oh, I'm in there. I didn't think I was getting in though.
I kept making the interviews. Each time I thought that I did good, but this last time was the one that I thought that I was like, yeah, I screwed this one up. Because I put my head down, I couldn't come up with words to say. And finally at the end, I told him, I said, listen, I don't know, what you want me to say. All I know is I need to get in here. I need something to help change my life. Maybe that's what works for me.
The new guys that just got accepted into BPI, I don't think they have any idea what they're in for. Next week when they start class, they're in for a surprise.
Everybody's good? All right, let's get started. Welcome to Bard College. Congratulations. We're gonna start coursework Monday morning, and I think we should just start being really clear about the scale of the commitment. First of all, that we're making to you, and secondly, that we expect of you. This is a full-time and long-term and total commitment. When that door closes, you're at Bard College. Faculty are going to be evaluating what you do as a student exclusively. That is to say, the college has no interest in the nature of your criminal conviction, the length of your sentence, how much time you have left in prison. It's not our business. We're in the business of education. This is the thing we know how to do, and we happen to do it here. And when you leave this room tonight, there is now something that can be taken away from you that's completely different than when you walked in.
Hope you enjoyed that first clip reel. For me, what Max Kenner said about when the doors close, you're at Bard is a sentiment we agree with. And, we are at WNC, we're there to educate, and that's what's important to us. So now I want to introduce our panelists. We're going to be doing the Q&A in 3 different sections. Right now, I'm going to introduce all of the panelists, and then the first 3 coming up, I'm going to introduce first. And they are Lynn Novick, who is the director of College Behind Bars. She's an Emmy, Peabody, and Alfred I. DuPont Columbia Award-winning documentary filmmaker. For 30 years, she's been directing and producing documentary films about things like American culture, history, politics, and much more. Welcome to Lynn. I really appreciate you being here. We're looking forward to hearing from you. And next up is Christine Jones Brady, who is Nevada's second assistant attorney general. And she serves as one of the top legal advisors to Nevada Attorney General Aaron Ford. She oversees Criminal Prosecutions Unit, Bureau of Consumer Protection, Investigations, Medicaid Fraud, and Post-Conviction Unit. She also, earlier in her career, practiced law at Washoe County Public Defender's Office, where for 10 years she worked in the areas of family court, misdemeanor, and felonies. And we welcome you as well to the panel. Thank you for being here. And President Dr. Vincent Solis. He's been the president of Western Nevada College since July of 2018 and brings nearly 30 years of experience in higher education to the college. His own college career started at Chemeketa Community College, and he knows firsthand the transformational power of education, and I think he'd be the first person to say that. He's been one of our biggest advocates for the higher ed and prison program, and we really appreciate that too. Now, I am going to introduce the other panelists who are not going to be part of this Q&A, but they'll be coming up later. We have Daiwan Tatro, who is a Bard prison alumnus and is the government affairs officer at the Bard Prison Initiative, where He works to increase public investments in college and prison. And I also want to give congratulations to him because he just recently received a new position as Senior Advisor for Strategic Outreach at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Congratulations on that. That's awesome. And then I'm also very proud to introduce two WNC graduates who both are formerly incarcerated. They were veteran students at our Warm Springs campus, as we like to call it, and we really appreciate them being here. Wade Rochard started his college career at Warm Springs, like I said, and he also served as a college clerk for us. He graduated from WNC in December of 2018 with honors with an AA in anthropology. He is currently a student at CSU Global Campus, and he's working to finish his undergraduate work. And eventually he hopes to attend UNR to receive his master's degree. He works as the assistant to the superintendent with the Northern Nevada Veterans Memorial Cemetery. And I have to say, you know, we got to give a shout out to the Department of Veterans Services, because hiring formerly incarcerated people is not something a lot of companies are willing to do. And that does not go unnoticed. And we need more companies to come on board and more organizations to do that. Adam Temple, he just graduated with an Associate of General Studies while still incarcerated in the spring of 2020. And he left with a 3.953 GPA. Adam was actually trained by Wade to be the college clerk after Wade left. And then Adam trained me when I showed up to do the paperwork for new students and enroll students. Adam was right there showing me the ropes because I did not know what I was doing, but he sure did. So I am grateful for that. And Adam has a job with Prospect Peak, and they put up steel buildings. If I have that correct, Adam might have to correct me on that. So welcome to all of our panelists. And I'm going to let Dr. Solis take it away. He's the moderator for this session. So do your thing.
Thank you, Deb. Welcome to all of the members in the audience, all of the members of our panel. It is a privilege and an honor to have everyone here tonight to talk about this very important topic that is near and dear to my heart, near and dear to Western's heart, and is extremely important in its capacity to transform the lives of those that we serve. You know, being the college president, and when we took this project on and expanded it, one of the things that we explored was what the expectations were going to be of our students and what the expectations were going to be of the team members from Western. And for our students, it's made abundantly clear that the expectations are that they work hard, that they be committed to the program, that they expect and understand that the rigors of college will be applied to every single course that they take. The expectations of our staff, similar to what you saw in the clip about the film, is that these are our students through and through. We will never refer to them by anything else other than our students. That is the tenet and the philosophy that drives the work that we do. They are at different campus sites. We have campus sites at Warm Springs Correctional Facility, and we have a campus site at Northern Nevada Correctional Facility. I would be remiss if I did not thank the partners that we have at the Department of Corrections. They do amazing work, and we could not do this work without their efforts, their commitments, to the partnership, to ensuring that we provide services to these students. Because one of the things that we've learned in education is that education is truly the greatest equalizer that there is. And we have a moral and social obligation to ensure that we provide the same kind of access to the students that we serve at any of our facilities in the same way, the same manner that we do for all students, because education is one of the greatest civil rights issues that we have facing us as a country. Like I said, it's a great equalizer. It's what makes the playing field level in many instances. But for the students in this program, it's extra special because they are doing it at a time of great adversity in their lives. They're in an environment that in many instances can be very challenging, but they somehow manage to get through the program and be successful at it. I will say that they are one of the most elite academic performing groups that we have, with a 96% success rate. And I'm very proud of that fact because they work hard. They're dedicated. And when I visit with my students at these facilities and our locations, I love one of the shirts that I saw out there that they made at Prison Industries that says, "We have the right to do it time. We have the time to do it right." And I think that that encapsulates their commitment while they're there to make sure that they're being successful in our program. So with that said, I will be the moderator for this part of the program. And I'm going to start off by thanking Ms. Novick for the amazing work that she's done on this film. It's extremely powerful. I encourage you to watch this. It's available on Netflix. I also want to thank Ms. Brady, who's here representing the justice system in the great state of Nevada. So ladies, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to start off with a general question for you, Ms. Novick, is tell us a little bit about the genesis of this amazing project and what you think as it relates, what your thoughts are on the transformative power of these students receiving an education while they are incarcerated.
Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight and for sharing this conversation with us. It actually goes back almost 10 years, 2012. I had just finished a film that I made with Ken Burns about the history of Prohibition. And the producer of that film, Sarah Botstein, and I were invited to give a guest lecture to a group of college students. And those happened to be college students who were studying in a program that we knew very little about, the Bard Prison Initiative, which was happening inside maximum security prison in New York State. So we went to the prison with our DVD and we showed clips of our film, kind of like what we're doing tonight, showing clips, talking about the film, having a conversation. But the thing is that those students asked the most brilliant questions of any students or any audience I've ever been in front of anywhere, except for tonight, we'll see. But they were so serious, they were so thoughtful, they were so sophisticated. And it was a really impressive and sort of invigorating conversation for us. We just couldn't really believe, and we shouldn't have been so surprised that this kind of academic excitement was happening inside a classroom, inside a prison. And when we walked out of the prison that day, we looked at each other and we said, this is amazing. The world needs to see that this kind of academic accomplishment is happening here and how smart these students are and what they're doing and what they're interested in. And so it kind of planted the seed that the way to show the world this was to make a film about this experience. And I had the chance to teach in the program myself the next year. Max Kenner, who you saw in the clip, was very gracious to offer me the opportunity to be a professor myself. So I spent 8 weeks teaching a seminar about history and documentary. And then Sarah and I started to work on the film. And that required incredible access from the students and from the Department of Corrections. And it took quite a long time to get all of that organized. And we just want to say a huge thank you to the Department of Corrections of the state of New York, the Bard Prison Initiative, but most important to the students who were willing to work with us, who wanted to tell their stories, who were willing to let us film them, all through about a 4-year period of working on degrees and coming home. And it was a profound experience for us. And it's been amazing to see the response to the film as it's come out. It was on public television about 1.5 years ago, and it's still very much alive. And we're, really gratified that their stories, and it's been just a beautiful thing to see the power of this documentary to help people understand exactly what you were saying, which is why education is the most transformative thing that anyone can have.
Thank you, Ms. Novick. You said something that I think segues perfectly into the question that I have for Ms. Brady. Ms. Brady, thank you so much for being here. A question that I have, that sparked from the response that Ms. Novick had is, how do you see the relationship between your office and the AG's office working with Department of Corrections and ourselves as Western to facilitate this program? As I mentioned, we've got amazing relationships and even more amazing partners in the program, but what are your thoughts on the partnership and how your office in the AG's, the Attorney General's office plays it? What kind of role does it play in this? And thanks again for being here.
Thank you for having me here. This is just important, the work that you're doing for our community. The first thing is that Attorney General Aaron Ford, one of his core values and main goals is criminal justice reform. So in the first instance, we can play a role by working with partners throughout the state on criminal justice policy, criminal justice, or even just community policies that may impact persons who are incarcerated and their opportunities for education. So technically what we do is the AG's office, we serve as counsel to the Nevada Department of Corrections on the civil side. So we can provide guidance and counsel in how to establish some of these programs within the NDOC. On my side of things that I'm responsible for, which is criminal prosecution, we prosecute crimes in the prison. And what the studies show is that if inmates have opportunities to participate in college and other educational opportunities, the crime can go down. And so there's incentive for people if they are in education, as the video said, they have something to lose. And so if they have something to lose, then that makes them a little bit less likely to commit crimes against their fellow, what I should say, community members that are within, behind the bars. So those are some of the ways in which we are involved in the criminal justice system and can help to shape what education and bringing education to NDOC.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. You said something that also got my wheels turning. I would be so remiss if I did not thank the governor, Governor Sisolak. For those of you that may be viewing from out of state of Nevada, we have an extremely supportive governor and an extremely supportive attorney general. They visit not only on campus on our graduation, but they also visit with the students in this program. And one of the things that I wanted to kind of lead into the next question for both of the US panelists is, how do you think the process of building trust works between these areas? For the filmmaker like yourself, Ms. Ovek, it's about coming up with this great idea. Hey, I want to film the students in prison. How do you get the trust of not only the students, but on the administrative side, how do you build a trust with people like Ms. Brady, who at the end of the day are going to say yay or nay or something like this? What are your thoughts on trust and relationship building with such a complex endeavor like education, or in this case, college behind bars? And that's open to both of you.
Yeah, well, I think I'll start with the students. We spent a lot of time inside the prisons without our cameras there, just getting to know people and trying to explain what we were doing and why we wanted to make the film, and then getting a sense if they'd be interested in participating, and getting to know them and explaining who we were, what kind of films we've made before, why we wanted to make the film, why we thought it would be important for the world to see what they were accomplishing, and also the challenges that they faced trying to be such accomplished students in this very difficult setting. And it took a while, I'm not gonna lie. I don't think any of us should trust anyone coming up to them and saying, hey, I want to make a movie about you. You have to really figure out, who is this person? What are their motives? What are they up to? And I think Daiwan later could speak about it, but it took time to build trust. And I think one of the things that I've heard now, I didn't know then, is that we really asked the students about their academic interests, about why they were in college, about what they hoped to do when they came home, about their families. We weren't especially interested in the questions that most reporters or journalists ask when they encounter people who are caught up in the criminal justice system. And we all know what that question is. Why are you here? And we weren't actually interested in that. We wanted to know about their experience as students, as you were saying. And I think, it felt to us that that was respectful and proper and the right way to get to know someone. Tell us who you are, tell us what you're up to, tell us what your hopes and dreams are. And, it took us 4 to 5 years to make the film. And over time, we sort of start to get to know people better, and they wanted to talk more about those very difficult questions too. And that became part of the film as well. And in terms of getting the trust of the Department of Corrections and the governor's office, which we also had to have, we were very clear we were making a film about this college experience in prison. We weren't making an expose about prison or any other big issues of mass incarceration per se. We really wanted to focus on something that actually was positive, what was possible, what could happen, what could be, some good outcomes that could transpire. And the governor of New York and the acting commissioner of the Department of Corrections, Anthony Nucci, really believe in the power of education just like you do. And so they wanted the film to get made, and they gave us incredible access.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that, when you've got state leaders that support these kinds of initiative, it makes the work so much easier. Ms. Brady, what about you? If you were to give, a practitioner, either on the education side or someone like Ms. Ovek who'd be interested in doing research or work in the area, how would they best approach your office and the Department of Corrections with ideas like these?
Well, with our administration, it's kind of an easy sell to some extent, because when you think of people who are incarcerated, and I'm going to back up just a little bit, is that every person who is incarcerated is a community member. We often look at them and say, there's a them and there's an us, and we dehumanize people once they're incarcerated. But if you really unpack it. Every person, again, is a community member, may be a brother, a sister, a son, a daughter, a father, a mother. And every time you put them in prison and you don't give them an education or training or the skills they need to rebuild their lives when they get out, chances are they're going to go back in or recidivate. So when you have a governor of Nevada and an attorney general of Nevada that is interested, in other states that are interested in lowering recidivism, that necessarily includes education, because education is the path to getting a job. Education and jobs are the path to being able to afford housing, to being able to afford taking care of your children or elderly parents or what have you, to being able to get health insurance. And all of those things set the foundation to make all of us as a community stronger. So I think that as you approach different administrations, different individuals within the government, you come with the statistics, with the ideas, with the data that demonstrates education matters.
Love the response, Ms. Brady. Thank you so much for that. Ms. Novak?
I just wanted to add, to make the film, I didn't know that much about the history of this issue, and I had to go back and learn. And there was a time when education, higher education, college, and other forms of education were present in most prisons in America. And that was in the 70s and 80s into the early 90s. This was commonplace. It was understood, like you're saying, that this is what people need. And we need to prepare people in a very punitive environment of the 1990s and the tough on crime kind of rhetoric and the 3 strikes and all of this that got us to this crisis of mass incarceration also stripped out education programs from prisons. And that's contributing to the huge crisis that we have. So it's sort of like Max Kenner always says, this isn't new. It's just that we sort of turned our gaze away from it for a generation.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. The other thing that I think is so important to these discussions is the support to make it happen, not just in spirit and in agreement in terms of what's best as a practice, but thanks to the type of administration that we have at the state level, from the governor on down, or to our legislatures, the support, the financial support to make these initiatives happen, along with these very powerful partnership with the AG's office, with the Department of Corrections, with the college, really help transform the lives of the students that we serve. Before I ask the next question of our panelists, I did want to remind the viewing audience that we have an opportunity for you to ask questions in the chat function. So please, if you have questions of these amazing panelists who do such great work in this area, please let us know. We'll be sure to convey those questions to them. So Ms. Brady, I'm going to start with you on this one, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Novak. What do you think has been for you the most surprising aspect of the success of this program with our students? What has surprised you the most about the work that we're doing with students at these facilities?
I guess what I'm just learning, I'm still in the process of learning about the program, but what has surprised me is what you said was the 98% success rate. So I was pleasantly surprised to hear that. In a prior life before law school, I used to teach at a college, and I have my master's in sociology. And so, you have a lot of people that maybe drop the class, or they just kind of come to class and they're on their cell phones or doing whatever. And so I was impressed at that rate, at that high success rate. That's what was most impressive and surprising to me.
Thank you so much. What about you, Ms. Novak? You've been doing this work for a while now. What's been most surprising with all the work you've done with students across the country in this area?
Well, I think it's just been really beautiful to see the response the film has had, and the students, many of the students that you saw in the film are no longer incarcerated, and they've been traveling around in real life and then virtually with us to share their stories about the impact of the film. And it really has changed people's perspectives in such a deep way. We've shown this film on Capitol Hill, we've shown it inside prisons, and it really seems to touch people, and there's some universality to it, which I think speaks to, the power of education to open minds and to change lives and to sort of transform narratives, to touch our hearts and our souls. And that's what gets me out of bed in the morning it's such a privilege to have been able to be part of this story and to see the impact it's continuing to have, even, events like this. I'll be honest, most of the films I've worked on with Ken Burns, I've worked on the Vietnam War, Prohibition, baseball, jazz, a lot of projects. The film comes out, it goes on TV, and then maybe it's in classrooms, but we're not continuing to do conversations about it 2 or 3 years after it's been on. So this is a really powerful message, I think, that people really want to hear. And that means a lot. When we started the film, the environment was very different. And now there's strong bipartisan support for criminal justice reform. As Ms. Brady was saying, we understand that the system that we have had has been unjust and kind of broken, and we need to fix it. And so it's just great to see that how things have shifted and that the story of the students in this film is really being part of that.
Thank you, Ms. Sovic. We're about to go to the next clip, but before I do that, I want to ask one last question of Ms. Brady, because I think that while the focus has been on the success that's happening inside the educational programs that we have and services, Ms. Brady, can you talk a little bit about, from the AG's perspective, from your perspective, what incarceration does to the communities that it impacts? What are your thoughts on that?
Are you talking about the level of incarceration? Could you?
The impact that incarcerating members of our community has in general. What are your thoughts as it relates to what happens to families, what happens to communities, what happens to, the ramifications that take place as a result of, moms, dads, sisters, brothers, uncles, relatives disappearing into the incarceration system? It leaves a wake of many issues behind. But what are your thoughts on that from the outside perspective?
Especially, let's start with someone who's incarcerated that has children, maybe a wife and children. And when they are incarcerated, they no longer are able to provide income for their family. So their family is more likely to live in poverty and to need government assistance in order to survive. And that can make it very difficult for the children who grow up. So when we have such a large percentage of our population who are incarcerated, have to keep in mind that may mean that we have a lot of children who are growing up without a parent in the house and without the income. So that has a whole set of ramifications on the children. The other thing it does is, let's say the person doesn't have children, just aside from the children. What it does for the community is it really takes away community resources. So when someone is incarcerated, they're removed from the community, they're deemed that they can no longer be in the community at that time for whatever reason. Now they're taken out. That is a missing resource that they could have been. Had they had the education and the opportunity up front, that would have been a positive resource for the family members of that person as well as the community. Maybe they could have had a business or, saved a life or become a doctor or a lawyer. So it's a huge drain on our human resources in the community when we have so many people incarcerated. And then there's just the fiscal budgetary aspect of everything, how much it costs to incarcerate each person every year. And so if we were to take that, I think some of the statistics and maybe Wickham could give us that number, but I want to say something I read earlier today was about $60,000 per person to incarcerate. And so if you think about that, there's other ways that money could potentially be used if that person were educated and made to give them the tools that they need to be a member of society. So
powerful. Thank you so much for that, Ms. Brady.
I agree so wholeheartedly with everything that you said. I just wanted to add one more statistic that we learned along the way, which is that for every dollar that we spend on education for people who are incarcerated, we save $5 because of so many reasons. People don't go back to prison. They're productive citizens. They pay their taxes. Their families do better. So it's a huge investment in our future.
It is. Thank you so much, Ms. Novick, Ms. Brady. It is a privilege and an honor to have you with us tonight. We're going to move on to the next clip. But again, thank you so much for your work and your commitment to these important issues. We couldn't do this work and have these successes without great partners like yourselves. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
The question was, what's the most satisfying way for a human being to live in the world, according to Hannah Arendt, Michael Crawford, and Aristotle, right? anyone can volunteer.
So I think that Arendt,
Hannah Arendt, yeah.
I believe that I think that Arendt believes that if humanity were to stick with the 3 activities, then
Which 3 activities are those?
activity, work, and labor.
Labor, work,
not in the
and-
same order.
Labor, work, and action.
Labor, work, and action. If humanity was to stick with them, then life would be satisfying.
And why?
Anything and everything you believed or was taught to believe, none of that matters. It's like all that's bullshit. Now I want you to read with like a fresh slate and just like, what do you think this means? What do you think the author was trying to say? Who is the author? Like, where did he come from?
This is like the boot camp without the physical training. And it's kind of hard because the professor really isn't telling us if we're right or if we're wrong. She's leaving it up to us to figure it out. So that's even more of a challenge because now I'm questioning my own self.
I teach first years on a regular basis. What I get to see, what I know when they walk in there and they are doing their best to be brave in the face of probably some of the hardest material they've ever encountered.
All right, so today we are going to start class by talking about how to organize a paragraph. I've now had the opportunity to see some of your writing this semester, and what I'm noticing is some fantastic ideas, but not a lot of cohesion in your paragraph. So we're going to talk about what constitutes a paragraph. So a paragraph should be first unified. A paragraph should be coherent. It should be well developed.
When is there too many sentences?
Or too less.
Or too less.
Or too few.
A lot of the stuff that I was reading, I couldn't understand what it was. You know, it would take me 2-3 hours just to get past 2 pages because I would keep having to stop and go over and look in the dictionary, find out what this word is, and go over the paragraph over and over and over trying to figure it out.
What changes, let's say, around chapter 12?
A lot more people.
A lot more people.
When he goes into the Pharaoh,
Yes.
that's
good.
when I started thinking about it. I said, I don't know how to put it in the word. I know that when I seen the Pharaoh, I know something clicked in my head, and that's what made me start thinking about all the people how many people there are.
Okay. The world that we're inhabiting suddenly has expanded a great deal. Okay.
My life is different now because my whole program changed. You know, I was used to working in industry all day long. We make all the highway signs and the stop signs. We don't do the license plates. Everybody always thinks prison make license plates. You just sit there and do like robotic work. You know, a meaningless job.
Someone who is not in BPI may have a mess hall job. If you don't have a mess hall job, you can have a porter job, which is basically you sweep floors all day.
When you have an absence of any programs in prison that facilitate any kind of growth, individuals are becoming perhaps disillusioned because they're not being prepared for anything other than what they've already been doing, which is crime.
Wow, that's powerful. I'm telling you that I can see your writing improve greatly since the last time I looked at it.
Yeah, I'm getting to the point where now I actually enjoy writing these papers.
Yeah, that's so true. Max Weber uses a German. Definitely with German, you have words that have meanings beyond just the surface meaning. So for example, enlightenment is a word that we would think means to think at a higher level or to gain a state of consciousness. But when you read that word enlightenment in German, it has a whole bunch of connotations of a historical period. So try to read what's underlying his words.
This is my third full semester. Bard just gets progressively harder. I had a professor tell us, I teach college. And I teach to the best students in the most elite universities in the country, and that's what I'm gonna do here. Let's get started. When someone tells you that, it's a whole new day.
Metropolis.
I was just thinking, you have this Irish population who's kind of against the role of government in their lives, and yet they seem to be the ones advocating for like a greater government presence in some sense. Like how's that? Can you speak about that tension?
It's about power, and using power to actually both protect themselves, but also to secure their position within the greater urban, complex. Several of you have in the past referenced things like W.B. Du Bois' double consciousness, right? But there's no reason not to extend that metaphor to the Irish.
Okay, so they constantly have to negotiate or renegotiate this tension?
The tension is obvious for us, but in fact, like Du Bois' double consciousness, it's not that, one day you're one thing and the next day you're the next. It's in fact actually that there are two emotional, personal, communal struggles happening within you. There are things that, I take for granted when I'm teaching at MIT that I can just do that I can't do here. The mixed media that you'll use inside a classroom at an elite institution that I can't reproduce here.
First at A.
Here, you go back to a more basic teaching structure.
So what else I have, so U1, A1, U2, A2, so U3, A3, and plus now U4, A4. Okay?
Our students in BPI show up to class extraordinarily well prepared, and so a lot of that sort of gimmickry that we need, we don't need here as much because actually everyone's done the reading.
Essentially what you're doing is you're combining all of the components
Yes,
of your vector and
I'm going to just put this, I just use commutativity, and
so you're
this
collecting the terms.
And this one together, so that's what I'm looking for, okay? That's what I'm looking for.
下面这个 part 是什么？马，所以所有的 vehicle， 这是什么？这是听，这是什么？
我不知道，我不知道。
这是什么？
Your car already stopped or？ 再说一遍。
车已经停在停车场了。
停车。
There you go.
Okay, for this next part, Daiwan and the students are going to have a conversation, and Daiwan will be moderator for this.
Well, once again, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I am really, really happy and excited to be here. Daiwan Tetro, an alumnus of BPI, and one of the students you just saw in the film. And so, first things first, is this is about, what is happening in Nevada. I want to take a moment and just turn to Adam, to turn to Wade. And, in my family, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. How does that resonate in you guys' lives? Adam?
I'm the first person in my immediate family to go to college, and I'm hoping that it will give some inspiration to my sons. I've got 3 sons to continue going to college. They've all 3 started, but none have completed a degree. And so I'm hoping that my success will foster their success.
Wade?
Well, I'm the first of the oldest of us, 5 boys that went to college. I have nieces that have gone to college and done exceptionally well. But I think my family is probably more proud of mine than theirs a little bit, I think.
That's amazing. My older brother's been to prison. My younger brother's been to prison. and the type of opportunities that have been open to me post-release compared to what has been available to them due to the fact that I have an education and I have a degree have been radically different. So how do you both feel that, your college education has prepared you for reentering society and aided you in doing that? I know you both are gainfully employed, so if you want to touch on that a little bit. Feel free to jump in.
Go? Okay. Well, for me, I got out in April of 2018, and I had to finish off my associates on campus. But the challenge was coming out and reintegrating and finding that the corporation or a company or an institution that was willing to take the chance on somebody that had just been incarcerated. I kept hearing, you have this criminal background so that, you're a risk. Well, okay, if that's the case, but I think I'm more of a known quantity. I know that everything that I do has to be perfect 100% of the time, every time. I know I'm going to be watched. So I feel that people in my position are more loyal. Have an employee that would stick around a lot longer. You're going to have a number of different things that you don't get with somebody with a clean background. And then I think that in itself is a challenge coming out and reintegrating. But I think as more of us come out and get out there and do our success, we will be able to more people will be willing to take that chance.
So Wade, I think, I hear you echoing, something that President Solis said earlier, in that, the incarcerated students at Western Nevada are some of the most successful and motivated students you have. And so what you're saying is that, you get an educational opportunity in prison, you make the most of it, you get out and you got a job opportunity. So you're sure as heck going to make the most of that. That sounds about right to me. Adam?
Yeah, for me, it enabled me to come out of prison with a sense of pride, and I was able to walk taller in life. I started and completed something that was unattainable to me before I was incarcerated, and I'm just really proud of who I am and what I've accomplished, and I think it shows in my self-confidence with talking to everybody, including my employer. I interviewed with them, and within 10, 15 minutes, it was just going so great. And I truly believe it was from my sense of accomplishment inside that I was able to obtain a job within a week of getting out.
That's amazing. Yeah, at the Bard Prison Initiative, over 80% of our students are employed within 60 days of their release. And so, having a college degree really, really makes a big difference. And so I want to turn to maybe a different aspect of this, and it's something that I don't think sometimes we talk about enough, because a lot of these individuals end up being invisible. But here in New York, we have fabulous partners within the Department of Corrections who've supported college and prison for a very long time. And our work at BPI, quite frankly, couldn't happen without them. And so do either of you, maybe want to share, some of the people within NDOC that you've come into contact with that supported you in your journey?
Yeah, I'll start out with Mr. Wickham. He was the warden of the prison that I was at in Warm Springs, and he was a champion of the college program. And I can absolutely say, without his work, I wouldn't be where I am right now. He really inspired me. He was a fellow veteran. He would come down. He would speak with us often, and he was a champion of the college program. And speaking with him, it gives you a sense of you don't want to let him down. I want to get out and I want to be successful. And he may not know my name, but I'm going to be successful for what he's done. I'm not going to let him down.
Yeah, I was on the debate team at Bard, and we would go into the debates, and some of the officers, joke, they'd say, you guys better win today or you're going to be in trouble. And so, they took pride in us winning those debates. Wade?
Well, or to add on to what Adam's saying is that on top of Warden Wickham, he left just as we started, or I was there. But Miss Walsh she stayed on and she was there for a while. Miss Walsh was my champion. She went to bat for me. She went the extra mile for me. Not only that, but she was instrumental on getting the prison education program brought into WNC and starting the veterans wing and such. So I really hope she's watching. She and all the staff, from the counselors on down, if you were putting in the work in there, everybody was behind you. From the guards, I've ran into correction officers and counselors on the outside, and their first words are, "How are you doing out here? How's it going?" And they remember you, and they're able to help bolster your success. I think that is very instrumental to support of the Department of Corrections, no matter what state it is.
I think that's amazing, and taken with what you guys just shared in conjunction, with some of the things discussed during the last panel. What we're hearing is that it takes a commitment at all levels to make something like this work, right? It takes a commitment from students, a commitment from correctional staff. It takes a commitment from the governor, from the AG's office, and last but not least, Western Nevada to, go to prison with their staff and their degrees and their program, make something like this work. So it's really, really, truly is a community effort. And so, I had a lot of really amazing experiences as a student at BPI. And I think as a student at BPI, I learned for the first time in my life, what a teacher was, what a professor was. And in particular, I'm a math major with an understudy in biology. And I had a biology professor trying to explain to the class this really, really complex biological principle. And it just wasn't going over well. It wasn't landing. And maybe 5 minutes in, he stopped the class and he said, "You guys know something? It's my responsibility to teach this to you. I came in here today not expecting you to know it. The fact that you're not getting it is not your fault. That's my problem. I'm the teacher. I'm going to go back home tonight. I'm going to go back to my office tomorrow. I am going to rework this lesson. And I'm going to come back next week and we're going to get it." And he came back next week and we got it. And that was the first time, I had a teacher, a professor, kind of take responsibility for my education. We're always told, the responsibility is completely on you. You got to show up, you got to do the work. And that's true. But, that professor really was invested in teaching us students. And so you guys have anything you want to share in that regard?
I think that's a very important lesson, is that by example, because all of us, we all learn by example, especially people that are incarcerated, and having a mentor or a professor that takes responsibility to really believe in what they're doing. That by itself will always, turn some heads while you're incarcerated. When you get to see, it's not so much what they're saying, it's what they're doing.
And for me, it was watching the dedication of every one of the instructors that would come out to the prison. I don't care if it was snowing, if it was raining, they never missed a class. And how can you not give 100% when you have instructors driving, I don't know how many miles to come out there to the prison to instruct in adverse weather conditions? You're going to give 100%.
All of our classes were at night on prison. So these people were coming out in the middle, not leaving until 9 o'clock at night sometimes, going back home. And they were really putting in the work. So we would too.
So what it sounds like for all of us is, that we were conditioned to have high expectations for our instructors, and, they in turn had really, really high expectations for us. And that kind of mutual raising of the bar pays off in the long run.
Absolutely.
And so, you both were incarcerated. I spent 12 years in prison. I got interested in BPI. I saw the program on a 60-minute segment, and I wasn't doing anything else better in prison at the time, working out, maybe read a book, sit in your cell. And so that, seeing other men like me in Green in prison in New York, inspired me. And I said, oh, I can go to college, right? I can do that. And, I transferred to a facility where BPI was. I took the test, I got in. And as I say, kind of the rest is history. Moment in your incarceration, why did, you enroll with Western Nevada?
Well, I'd like to start that out with Wade was my cellie in there, and he was the college clerk. And so I hadn't gone to college, and he said, "Come on, man, let's try this." And so he inspired me to start. And watching him work and watching his dedication, I became the college clerk. After he left, he trained me, and I became the college clerk. So he is one of the main reasons that I even started going to college. Thank you.
You know, it's something I think is really, really powerful. It's one of the things that I was most proud of as a BPI student. I would spend my students, my summers off tutoring other incarcerated people out in the yard, in the gym, kind of at rec. So working on their writing, working on their math skills so that they could take the entrance exam. And so, Wade, hats off to you. And Wade, how did you get involved with the program?
Well, it's quite easy, or not really, but one day we had heard that the college was coming into the school, and they had a little paper, so I went and took that. And it dawned on me that I had a path to choose. I can go left or right, and I can stay in the character that I was, and the prison was just going to end up being a career for me, and I just did that. Wouldn't be an option. And they told us that with getting our education, that it would be a pathway to where we can reintegrate society, and our past won't affect us as much. And so I grabbed a hold of that, and then the rest is history.
Amazing. So both of you are out, both of you are working. Have either of you gone on to maybe to graduate school? Do you have a master's degree in mind, pursued further education?
I've been out. Go ahead, Wade.
I finished off my associates and took a semester off, and now I'm finishing up my undergraduate work at Colorado State University Global Campus. I'm about a semester 2 out, and then I plan on going on to hopefully do my master's thesis in criminal anthropology, to where I can give back, maybe part-time instructor at the college level for anybody who wants to take a criminal justice degree, that they would take a class to be able to help them understand the criminal mindset and how the thinking is and how off it can be sometimes, and help to reduce recidivism.
I think that's really, really powerful, Wade. Taking your experience in your education and going back into the community and working to combat the reasons that, lead to people's incarceration in the first place. That's really, really amazing. Adam, same question.
I've only been out just over a month, and so I really hit the ground running, with a job and just getting my life together. So I'm taking this semester off, but I'm going to be going back to school next semester to get my second associates in applied science.
Yeah, that's great. And, personally, I was released in 2017. I didn't have enough time while I was incarcerated to finish my degree. And so I finished my degree post-release on the main Annandale campus and graduated with a BA math major in 2018.
Nice.
I've just been working since. I'm only going to go back to graduate school if I have to. So I just want to turn to the next question and move us along here. What do you want new HEP instructors to know? What should people coming into facilities to teach keep in mind?
I think that for the new instructors coming in, that they're going to end up with students that inspire them. They're going to be blown away by the dedication of people that are incarcerated. People that decide to make that change in their lives and to feed their brain, really hit a home run in there. And it's going to inspire the teachers how well their students do and are just involved in the classes.
Personally, I think, and to WEC's credit, the topic was brought up and suggested that the people or programs that are thinking about doing this, that they need to have their instructors need to sit down with a former inmate and be able to talk with them and to reassure them that it's not like what they hear on TV, it's not like what they see. Now, the preconceived notions that they have of what inmates are like and what it's like in prison is not, they're not going to find that in most cases. They're going to find people that are truly dedicated and that this is their passion at the moment. And I think it would be a shame to lose a quality instructor over something that they perceive might be the case when it's actually not.
You know, what it sounds like you guys are saying is that we should just tell everyone to watch College Behind Bars.
Absolutely.
Right, exactly.
Right. And last but not least, before we move on to the third clip here, you know, how does having Western Nevada coming into the prison, teaching classes, you know, both of you working in there as students, helping one each other. Wade, you pulled Adam into the program. You know, what type of sense of community does that nurture? Does that experience engender?
It fosters a sense of community. You leave all the politics, any kind of race issues, it's all left behind. Only the people that are in the program, know coming in the program that there aren't going to be any of that. And there's, you know, we keep each other up with study halls, you know, we help each other out in whatever fashion we can. And there's zero problems between fellow students.
That's amazing. You know, one of the things that we've observed here in New York is, you know, every facility that has a college program operating within it, violence dramatically decreases.
And for me, it was being able to reintegrate into society and become a contributing member of society, and being able to have that opportunity to be able to blend in again, to be able to be not a stigma, not a burden, or not a drain on society, but just be able to be productive and just basically, as we say, be a square bear. Just to no longer have that moniker, you know, over us, that we're just we're regular citizens.
Yeah,
I think college is a great way of bringing that about.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I often like to point out, because it's really easy to, you know, focus on the education and focus on the degrees, but there's a social component to this that's just as important, right? You know, prison is a very isolating space, and as Adam pointed out, you know, sitting in a classroom and talking to other people that you may not otherwise talk to out on the yard is a different type of experience in the prison setting. You know, when I first got in prison, how I interacted with my peers in the classroom, you know, that gave me a baseline for how to interact with coworkers, right? How I interacted with my instructors, my professors, college administrators, gave me a baseline for how to interact with my employers. And so there's a social component to this. So, you know, I agree that it's just as important as the education. And it really points to the ways in which colleges can bridge the divide between the community and incarcerated people and strengthen reentry processes. With that said, you know, really amazing to be speaking with you guys, really proud of you guys. And we are going to jump into the third clip.
What's unusual about a BARD bachelor's degree is that every student has to do a senior project. And that is something they work on for the entire senior year. So it's sort of like a master's thesis, and the idea is this, that if you go to college simply to take courses, anybody can do that, but actually to do something of your own. So in this case, we have a senior project from a BPI student. It's a project in German studies, and the subject is migration of labor in Germany after the Second World War. So this student from prison studied German labor, German migration, the guest worker, and what happened to the guest worker. He read poetry, political theory, history in 2 languages, not only in German, but also in English, and wrote what is the equivalent of a master's thesis in order to graduate from college. He had to do exactly what any other student would have to do in the sort of normal college life. I believe that a good education makes the student respectful but challenging of authority. It builds a person with a sense of independence, and the institution has to reward risk-taking and entrepreneurship.
Moderation is the point in a BA student's academic career where they finally declare a major. So mine's is social studies. Moderation is almost like a rite of passage. 3 professors discuss my academic achievements so far and my research question. The senior project proposal is an important piece to the moderation.
Shall we jump to the proposal?
Yes, absolutely.
The title you've chosen, The Dream, Discourse, Subjectivity, and Perception. Can you explain that a little bit?
So,
I understand where you're trying to get at once I read the text, but the title didn't open the door for me.
this idea of discourse, the way I'm using it, it shapes our perceptions of equality. And so what I tried to do in the proposal is show how I'm breaking down the different levels of discourses. So we have this discourse of race, this discourse of meritocracy, and a discourse of individualism. And I don't quite know how I'll find these different arguments and try to categorize and put them in these categories that I've come up with.
These students, they have 1 semester left of coursework, and then they're into really writing the senior project. Do you know everybody here already? I think the senior project is a huge motivator for a lot of the students. They enjoy the coursework, but they want to get to the end so that they can write a senior project of their own. Could you talk a little bit about how you came up with this topic?
I'm moderating into social studies. My senior project is going to be about Japanese imperialism over Korea and how, in contemporary perspectives of Japanese and Koreans, how they look back on the event and how it shapes national identities.
I'm also expecting a bit of critique, and I'm hoping I deal with that well as far as being able to answer whatever questions they might have or any confusion that they may have come across in my proposal. But I'm pretty nervous. Everyone says it's not that big of a deal, but that's always after the fact.
See you again.
And so my senior project, which revolved around the idea of resistance and in incorporating resistance into how we look at imperialism.
The senior project is going to require, a lot of discipline and a lot of time management. I actually want to finish early because I may be going home before, it's actually due. So I want to get as much work as I can while I'm in here.
Actually, this was really nice. It wasn't what I expected.
No, I know.
I thought I was going to be... It's finished. It's finished. Oh, I need deodorant. I need deodorant. Oh, man. For me, the moderation process was a huge step because I see it as representing our bachelor's degree. At first, I wanted to receive a bachelor's degree. Now I want to earn it. When we walk on that stage and we grab that diploma, man, we're going to say, look, we earned this. And I think that's the moment that we're all waiting for. And, we're going to push hard, we're going to work hard.
This is the next stage of my bar career. I'm now someone who is doing research. I'm a scholar. That's a big deal. So I'm looking at the civil rights movement and I'm looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, how their rhetoric has evolved over time. These are some of the articles that I asked for my senior project. I have to do the best I can to get as much information as I can from social media, so that's what I've been doing.
I'm thinking of the Hispanic voice in hip-hop culture, how we've come together and, contributed to hip-hop culture.
I'm looking into immigration, writing about immigration, reform, about
the social and economic aspects of it.
My senior project will explore the relationship between poetry and painting.
Rodney. The thesis for the project is that Americans in general have used the black body as an object of rhetoric to define their identities. Black people, for example, used the suffering black body.
There's a lot of really powerful language, the idea of messianic.
Benjamin says that we shouldn't look at history as linear. When he says messianic, he's saying that this past is constantly being resurrected. So this is the afterword. During the course of my research, I developed a hyper-awareness of the many, often insidious ways in which society disfigures the personhood of marginalized people. I noticed the attempt of so many to lump disparate elements into the category of blackness or some other category meant to house the unworthy. Categories such as offender or inmate. It is difficult to live, to function in one of these categories. It begins to feel like scurf that one cannot scrub clean from the body. I am a, quote, irredeemable, trapped in one of these crippling categories for the undeserving. I'm reluctant to use the word anger. In America, anger and blackness and offender is considered a volatile mixture. But everyone, every single one of us should seethe when injustice is rampant and bodies are falling and the nation is divided about whether or not the losses of Eric Garner, of Laquan McDonald, of Mike Brown, of Trayvon Martin, insert here, are worth mourning. Mourning is not a question of race and bodies. It is a question of humanity. Let me say it plainly. The black body is a prison of flesh, and the truth is unforgiving. African Americans can no more relinquish their signifying black bodies than they can change the history of this nation. But they must continue to demand.
Okay, President Solis, you'll be taking on the Q&A for part 3.
All right, thank you so much, Deb. You know, these clips and the items that we see in them have been extremely powerful, and I do want to reiterate my thanks to Ms. Novick for producing such amazing work and capturing the things that we see in terms of what's happening behind bars in a college setting. Ms. Novick, thank you so much. I have 3 questions, 1 question each as we close out the program. And I know that we're running a little bit behind, but there's been so much powerful testimony and discussion that I hope that the viewing audience sticks with us for the next 3 questions. There will be 1 for each of our panelists to go through, but they're important questions, and I want to make sure that we get to them before we close out the evening. So I'm going to start with you, Ms. Novick. Ms. Novick, one of the things that's out right now in terms of a big topic for College Behind Bars is the idea of Pell Grants being available to incarcerated students across the country. We're excited about that at Western. It's going to be a game changer for us. What are your thoughts on this? Can you talk a little bit about where you see educational services for incarcerated students if Pell Grant comes through for us?
Yes. For anyone who doesn't know, in 1994, as part of the Clinton crime bill, Pell Grants were removed. Eligibility for Pell Grants was taken away from people who were in prison. And that basically meant the end of college and prison programs. And over the last few years, there's been a strong movement by formerly incarcerated advocates and people who run programs like yours to get this fixed. And just very recently, how long ago? A month ago, at the end of the last year, as part of a big spending bill at the end of the year, Congress included the restoration of Pell Grants for people in prison. It's a huge, epic change and a great victory for this cause. And I think our film played a small part in helping to just explain to people who might not know why this was such an important public policy shift. And it remains to be seen how it's going to be implemented. And I think Daiwan can probably speak more to that than I can. But the idea is that people in prison are now eligible for Pell Grants based on need, which is how Pell Grants work. It's a program based on economic need, and it's meant to give people a chance to have access to college. And so this is going to have, as you said, a tectonic change in the way we think about who can have access to higher education. I guess our concern, insofar as I have one, is just that We made the film to show what is possible when people who are incarcerated have access to a high quality, rigorous education, in-person instruction with professors like Daiwan and Wade and Adam were speaking about. And so we feel it's really important that when this money starts to flow and there's implementation on a wide national scale, that we remember that we should make the same kind of academic opportunities available to people behind bars as we would want for our own children, friends, and family out here.
Well said. Daiwan, going to you, first and foremost, thank you so much for spending time with us. 1, 2, congratulations on getting to where you're at and completing the program. The one thing about an education is that once you earn it, it can never be taken away. So I just want to thank you for investing in yourself and in others. You're working on legislation. What are you working on? Talk to us a little bit about what you're working on that could potentially be changing the landscape of prison and education in prison. What are your thoughts about this?
Amazing, thank you. We're coming off the Pell win and, looking at the college and prison landscape nationally, and what we saw post 1994 were many states implemented state financial aid bans to incarcerated people. So New York, for example, in 1995, following the Pell ban, made incarcerated people ineligible for state level aid. And so working on a campaign right here in New York to restore TAP, which is New York's tuition assistance program to incarcerated people. I believe that there are no barriers to state level aid for students in Nevada. That was the last kind of data point I checked, but I think that's true. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think, because college and prison is so successful at effectively reintegrating individuals back into society, we need to be looking at ways to better incentivize college programming. So for example, here in New York, you can be released from prison early on what's called the Merit Board for earning a GED, for spending 6 months in a vocational program, for quite frankly, raking leaves on a community work crew for 400 hours, but not for earning a college degree, right? And so we have a merit time system here in New York that disincentivizes college learning. So I have a bill right now in the legislature that is going to fix that. I think it's going to pass this year. And as Lynn pointed out, the more money that we're putting into college programs, the more students we have in college programs, the more money it is going to save us on the back end and make them students more successful, right? And so just working on things here in New York to incentivize and better fund college and prison with an eye to taking kind of that show on the road and doing some of that work in other states with some of our consortium partners at the Bars Prison Initiative.
Daiwan, before I go into to Ms. Brady on the final panelist question, I want to thank you and Adam and Wade. I just want to say that you all exemplify the kind of students every teacher loves to have in their class. You give us the energy to continue doing what we do. I wish you all three of you, the very best and future success in all your endeavors. With that said, Ms. Brady, I've got a million questions for you, but I know that we're limited in time. I have one question that I wanted to get your perspective on that I get all the time as a president of the college, and that is, why should we invest in programs that help educate students that are incarcerated? I get that question a lot. I wanted to get your perspective in terms of why it's important to invest at the state level, at the community level of ourselves, our time, our commitments. What are your thoughts on this? And when people ask, why do you guys invest in these kinds of programs? Why do our monies go there? What are your thoughts on this? You've been in the business a long time. You're in the AG's office. You're the number 2 person there, and you lead the charge. What are your thoughts when someone asks this question?
Well, it goes back to community. And it takes all of us as a community. And when people are re-entering the community from being incarcerated, we want to restore them to the community. And education is a big piece of not only restoring individuals to the community at large, but to their families. And so if we invest in them in their education, That's just one piece though. We also need companies and businesses to invest and take a chance on people and hiring them. We also need family members to be supportive. We also need the government. We have programs like you have the ACAJ, the Access to Criminal Justice, where we had the criminal justice reform evaluation, and it talked about how can we better spend money, take money out of just incarcerating people, but then reinvesting it into areas that help restore people to the community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the big word that comes to mind is community and restoring people to community, and how education is a key piece of that.
Thank you so much, Ms. Brady. To all of our panelists and to everybody that has been with us tonight, I want to thank you on behalf of the Western Nevada College family. I want to thank you for not only giving of yourselves and your times, but your expertise and your commitment to helping change the lives of the people that we serve through these powerful programs. Ms. Brady, Ms. Novak, Daiwan, and to our students, Adam, Harold, Mr. Wickham, to Wade, to everybody who's been on here tonight, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of something special. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Deb Conrad, who is the face of the program for Western and makes all of this possible. We just get to, at least on my end, I get to come up and be in front of the cameras, but she's the one that does all the work and makes it happen. So Debs, thank you so much for everything you do for us.
You're welcome. I prefer for you to be in front of the camera rather than me. So I don't think we're going to get a chance to go to all of the Q&A that are in the Q&A box, but there is one question that I do think we could address. And Chantel Marshall says, in a way, this kind of program is a little sad because it took going to prison for these men to get access to higher education. Do you think we can use this evidence for why we need more equitable education at all levels in our country? And Daiwan, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I think, absolutely. I think ultimately the work that we do at BPI, the work that you all are doing at Western Nevada, people like to place us in the criminal justice space, but we're educational institutions, right? And what we are doing effectively is expanding educational access, right? And so incarcerated people are often from demographics of individuals in this country through a combination of racial factors or economic factors who've been locked out of economic access to education. And so, our work really shows us that there are amazing students who are deeply talented, who just didn't have the same type of opportunity as the average Joe, but they're incarcerated. And if we want to live in a society of learned individuals of equal opportunity, we have to expand access, right? And one of the ways to do that is to keep doing what we're doing, to move money away from corrections, away from punishment, and into education and rehabilitation. And we're going to save money, we're going to make communities stronger, and we're going to build better people.
Thank you very much for that. Does anyone else want to weigh in on that? Lynn, Christine, Vince?
It was pretty perfect. I could not possibly add.
Very good. So I want to wrap this up by thanking all of the panelists who gave their time and energy today. We really appreciate it. I think this was a fabulous conversation. And I look forward to bringing this back again and having future conversations that delve into other subjects. We want to talk a little more with Nevada Department of Corrections and talk about what we do with Silver State Industries and prison industries and how that connects to reentry. And I also really need to give a big thank you to Big Picture Education for working with us on this, bringing this to us, and dealing with Priscilla, dealing with all of my texts and phone calls and panicking before we got to this point. She was a big help, and we would not be here without them. thank you, everybody. Thanks to all the attendees for being here. We really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Have a
Good night and good luck
Good
to
night.
everyone in your futures.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Brady.
you, guys.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
what you bring to this project. This is just phenomenal. You know, oftentimes as correctional professionals, we get to be the bad guys, the keepers of the keys, things like that. But in truth, this is the only way we know that we can reduce recidivism and return citizens to the community productively. So credit to you all for what you've brought together to accomplish this, and keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.